What's cooking? Good looking people of YouTube. How are you beautiful men and women doing out here today? I hope you're having a fantastic day. Really incredible day. I got a doozy for you guys today. Upcoming metagame threat Despia. This is all anybody's been talking about for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. It's just right now it's just like Despia waiting room. And a lot of people are really concerned, how do I beat this deck? How do I play around this deck? And that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for. Today I'm gonna show you best hand traps against Despia, worst hand traps against Despia, where to hit it, and I'm gonna go over the biggest cheats. Okay, we're gonna break this video up into 3 acts. Get it? Despia acts. I know some of you guys caught that. I deserve a like for that one. No, unless. We're gonna be covering it all today. So sorry if this one turns out to be a doozy. I'm gonna cram it in as much as I can, as fast as possible. So without further ado, let's just get into it, huh? Let's just get into it. All right, first off, we all know this. Our girl, Ash Blossom, best hand trap against this deck. By far. Ash Blossom on the branded fusion, FTK. Might as well be at FTK. That interaction is just crazy good. There isn't really a lot of ways to play around it other than called by, cross out, maybe millenniumize, restrict, if they got it, I guess. Don't ever get it twisted. Don't go Ash in the Aluber. That is never the hit. It's always the branded fusion or the fusion destiny. Or keep that in mind, because those are the 2 biggest cards you could hit in that deck. And hitting the branded fusion, that turns off their whole combo. Keep that in mind. Next up, Belle. Ghost Belle. She's back and with a vengeance. She kicks ass in this deck. Okay, you could Belle the Albion effect. And you can Belle the branded and red, which are 2 really massive hits in this deck. Being able to stop the Albion, that turns off them going into, because usually it's Albion to make the Dragoon, or continue their plays. And Belling the branded and red is huge because it stops them from making the Guardian Chimera, which is maybe the win condition of this deck. maybe the strongest card in the deck. So being able to stop that from resolving, massive. What else we got here? Meister. If Belle's good, Meister's good. Being able to, you can Meister the Dramaturge, the Tragedy effects, which may not be the biggest thing, but in the grand scheme of things, that might be something you want to hit. Tragedy is the Rhoda for the deck. So if you can Meister that guy, if you have hand knowledge, or your opponent's very low on cards, just Meistering the Tragedy can be the move. That can be the motive. You can also Meister the end phase effects of Albion and Titaniclad, any of the Albaz fusions, their end phase effects. If you Meister those, really big, because Albion is either adding or setting branded fusion for the follow-up, or branded in red for the opponent's turn. So being able to stop those, really nice, really nice. Because again, we want to put them off of branded fusion, and we want to put them off of branded and red. Those are 2 of the strongest cards in the main deck. So being able to just nip those in the butt before they even start, big. Next up, bit of a freaky one, Chaos Hunter. I really like Chaos Hunter into this deck. You turn off the Albion and you turn off the branded and red with it, because they can't banish no more. They can't banish no more. So if we're able to stop them from banishing, that stops them Mirror Jade too. So that's one of the biggest. Mirror Jade and Guardian Chimera are 2 of the biggest boss monsters in the deck. So if you can stop that, and it's a passive effect. So if they were to go Drago Stapelia to negate it, they can't, because that's a continuous effect. Oh, isn't that crazy? Chaos Hunter, you do neg with it, but you do get a big body on field. So it's not all bad. But yeah, I really like that card into this deck. has a really great matchup. Next up, DD Crow. I think Crow's been a sleeper hit for a while. Crow's one of those hand traps, scales with your knowledge. Being able to hit a really intricate Crow can really cripple any combo. And here, Crow really punishes your opponent for playing low counts of Albaz in their deck. So if you Crow their Albaz in the graveyard while they have Albion on field, like if they're going Albion effect to banish to fusion summon, and you Crow the Albaz out of their graveyard, you've put them in quite the pickle. And then a lot of lists are saying to play one Albaz, which, you know, that could be, that's totally like, you know, it's a little greedy, but it's totally, I get it. It's a bit of a brick. If you're able to Crow that before they can get like a Lubellion established or something to start like looping it back, you've made it really difficult for them to play, and they have to find a really hard way to get it back out, if they even can find it. Crow, really nice here. You can also Crow the branded in red, so that resolves without effect. So when they go branded in red, target a Despia or Albaz in the graveyard, just Crow the target, and then they can't branded in red you. Really nice stuff. Next up, we got a couple C's, Retaliating C and Contact C. So Retaliating C, like a D shifter, pretty good at this deck. I'm not gonna say it's not the best thing ever, but it's not a bad option at all. Like, you're forcing them to banish a lot of resources that they wouldn't typically banish. And again, you've made it hard for them. You've made their plays awkward, and you're making them play weird and uncomfortable. So that's a good way to play with your opponent, kind of. Make it difficult for them to play so that they are like consuming more brain power, you know what I mean, to figure out these lines, and it's making them make these awkward plays to end on these subpar end boards, which is usually pretty good. Retaliating C does have the downside, though, of not faring too great into any sort of Brave package, because they can just go Draco back, bounce it back to hand, which does kind of stink. But like, you know, D Shifter, great card. It is a Flundery's staple, literally carrying the deck. So it having a decent matchup into this, not too bad. The other C I mentioned, Contact C, literally an FTK. If you time it properly, you have made it a nightmare for the branded player. So when if you wait for after the branded fusion to do it, that's usually best, or like after like a branded opening. Once they fusion lock themselves, that's when you can hit them with it. And then they gotta like make a Guardian Chimera on their own turn, gain no value off of it, which is really huge. Like, geez. What else? Like, that's like the only thing I could think of off the top of my head to get rid of the Contact C, because they can't link it away once they're fusion locked. Like a Shadal variant could go into like a Shekanaga, but like then the Shadal player has to play Shekanaga, so that's another issue. Yeah, Contact C, fantastic against Despia, in my opinion, anyway. Next up, we got Lancia. Lancia's solid. Like, you know, if they're on the Brave package, hits the Brave package. It turns off a Branded in red on their turn. Turns off a Mirror Jade on their turn, because a lot of times they're going throughout their turn, they're going to go Mirror Jade, send an Albion to the grave, banish the Aluber they have left on the field to get the Branded in red in their end phase. So if you're able to Lancia them so they can't do that, you've made it really weird for them, because now they don't have easy access to the Branded in red, i.e. the Guardian Chimera, and now they can't cycle back their Mirror Jade now. So they've just spent their Mirror Jade effect with no way to cycle it back to like reset it, which is really, really good. So Lancia, I'd put at a pretty damn good. That's it for like the ones I'd want to say, like, you know, are like you know, other stuff, like that's like stuff like, you know, you'd like main board, I suppose. Like main board and Contact C, maybe that's a little bit pushing it, but for like main board, it like more like, you know, vanilla average kind of stuff, that's where I'd probably like say like that's it for like the good stuff. Ogre is really good if they're on like the Brave package. You can like, I wouldn't really hit anything else with an Ogre. Ogre's good against the field spell too, I suppose. Super Poly is great. Does take up some of your extra deck space though. That's the problem with that. If your deck can afford it, by all means, play Super Poly then. What else we got? Imperm, Veiler, and Mourner are weird against this deck. Like our targeted hand traps, they're good if your opponent doesn't have the out for them, which is that's the hard part. There's a lot of ways to play around it. Branded Red can play around targeted hand traps. There's the Despian Comedy, Book of Moon, because you can still fuse with face down monsters. There's quite a few ways to play around it, which doesn't make it super great. But if they don't have the way to play around it, it's pretty good. If you can like drop that onto the Lubellion, catch them going neg on their play because they have to discard to use Lubellion's effect. So if you can catch them on that, that'd be really great if they don't have the out. So we gotta keep that in mind. D-Barrier, fantastic card against this deck, very obviously an FTK. No way to play around unless they got the cross out with a D-Barrier, but that's like 9 head. Like nobody is thinking like that unless they are. Talents is a great card against this deck. This deck does a lot of playing on your turn, a lot of monster effects on your turn. We gotta think Mirror Jade, we gotta think Guardian Chimera, Ad Libitum. You have a lot of ways to play on your turn, so you can get real easy use out of a Talents, and a lot of decks are playing Dragoon as well. So if they're on a Dragoon variant, Talents is a great way to get rid of a Dragoon. Like Super Poly too, like, you know, those are two great ways to out the behemoth that is Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So you can just get like free, like, you know, take a monster to extend or just draw 2, like for free against this deck. Like you get super easy Talents access, which is super awesome. A couple other ones I want to mention. Gamma's always pretty solid against any deck. Necro Valley is really good against this deck. And Mystic Mine. There's no inherent ways for this deck to clear out a Mystic Mine. So a lot of times you just kind of catch them on if you can catch them on the deck out, you just kind of win through that. And like that's probably it where I'd call it for like best hand traps against Despia. That's probably where I'd call it. That nothing else really hits quite the same like these ones. Ogre is good if your opponent's on like a Brave package. Like anything that hits a Brave package, if they're on it, is pretty good. But like right now the question is like, you know, do we play Brave? Do we not play Brave? Do we play Shaddoll Invoked? Or do we not? Do we play the Frightfur package? Like there's so much in the air because the deck hasn't seen any play yet. So I'd give it another 2 weeks after the deck comes out, 3 weeks, and we'll see it like, you know, kind of solve itself. Top players start getting really solid finishes with the deck, and we could see like, you know, where it's gonna go, what's gonna happen. Next up, what is terrible against Despia? Worst hand traps against Despia. Niburu. This deck almost never goes into 5 summons, and if they do, they probably put up protection like a Dragoon before then. On an average hand, they do maybe 4 summons, 3 to 4 summons. On an average hand, they don't ever need to go 5. So you don't ever see your return on a nib. Next up, we got Droll. Droll is pretty bad against this deck. It kind of like, because they play out their whole turn. I shouldn't say they like their whole turn. They like draw phase, Branded Opening to bring out the Aluber. Aluber searches in the draw phase now, so you can't Droll them and you can't Veiler them, which really sucks. But so you don't ever really see your like money's worth out of a Droll against this deck. Droll's pretty bad. Zombie World, another pretty terrible card. This deck doesn't really care about typings. The only time they do is if they go into like a Dragoon line. But that's not very, like, you know, that's like if your opponent is playing the Dragoon. That's the thing. Ghost Reaper is only good if you can Reaper the Lubellion. If you Reaper Lubellion, that's crazy. That's crazy. But if you let go like Reaper, like DP, or Mirror Jade or something, they can just go Lubellion to put it back. So that's where like the infinite recursion kind of comes into play. Like they don't ever have to worry about a Ghost Reaper or nothing like that unless you Reaper the Lubellion. What else? Dark Ruler is pretty bad because you don't really turn off anything that I wasn't going to get rid of anyways with like branded in red. So like usually like, okay, let's say end board is Mirror Jade, a dude, probably like an Aluber, branded in red set, and an ad libitum in hand. And we're gonna go activate Brandon in red, add a dude back from our grave. We're gonna use our Mirror Jade on field, our Aluber on field, the ad lib in hand. We're gonna fuse them all away, banish them, summon out a Guardian Chimera. Ad lib's gonna bring back the Mirror Jade, resets the Mirror Jade so we can banish again. So we got a pop 2 and a banish. I didn't even use any monster effects on my field. So Dark Ruler, pretty terrible, pretty terrible. Like, I guess if I have a Dragoon on field and like you're really terrified of like Dragoon, but you should probably have better outs in your sideboard. There can be only one. This deck never puts up the same type. If we're playing out the lines in our head, it's Aluber, Fairy, into Lubellion, Dragon, into Mirror Jade, Worm. We don't ever put up the same types. So something like TC Boo doesn't ever get any value. It's probably gonna hurt us more than it hurts them. And if anything, they're probably sideboarding it themselves. One more thing I want to mention is this deck has an incredible going second. So I want you to keep that in mind when you're siding, because this deck, they can play, like, you know, Guardian Chimera is a fantastic going second card. So Super Polymerization, which are two staples of this deck. So just keep that in mind when you're playing. Also, this deck jams like 15 hand traps, 10 to 15 hand traps. So, you know, just, you know, remember that. Remember that. Finally, we got the cheats. Don't catch that dude at locals trying to scam you out of a win, scum some wins by cheating with the new deck. Don't catch them slipping like that, okay? I'm gonna go over a few real common, like, you know, areas where somebody could make a mistake. And like, who knows, like, you know, I'm not saying like they're intentionally cheating, like they could have just not read their cards. Like, you know, it is Yu-Gi-Oh! We don't read. Don't forget that. All right, so first up, branded in red. We got to remember two things. It has to target. So if it loses its target in the graveyard, so that's to target a Despia or an Albaz. If it loses its target, resolves without effect. They don't get the fusion summon. And two, they have to banish the materials to fusion summon. So if you have something preventing them from banishing live, they cannot use branded in red. Remember that. Next up, Aluber, Tragedy, and Comedy. They all have one thing in common. They have two effects, but you can only use one effect per turn. It's not a once per turn on each effect. It's you can only use one effect per turn, not both. Don't get caught with that. That's an easy one to let slide, but an Aluber effect activating twice in a turn, that could cost you a game. Next up, Albaz. Albaz can only fusion summon using one monster you control and as many monsters your opponent controls. You cannot use multiple monsters you control for a fusion summon using Albaz's effect. Don't forget that. I'm going to say it after every single one of these. Don't forget that. These are very easy things. If we just take our time when we're playing and we're not rushing, we won't run into these issues. Okay. Next up, Dragoon. Red Eyes Dragoon. We remember him. He's back, baby. And we can't forget, if they summoned him using a fusion substitute, so like the Light Hex Seal fusion or the Goddess with the third eye, they don't get the pops. They only get pops if they use normal monsters. Dragoon's a beast, but he's not that much of a beast, okay? Don't forget that. Despia, Theater of the Branded. It has a secondary effect. Not only does it act as like a polymerization, it also, if a non-fusion fairy monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect or like destruction or something, you get to target a fusion monster in your grave, a level 8 fusion monster in your grave, and summon it back. Remember, a non-fusion fairy monster, not any old monster, specifically like an Aluber or something, has to leave for that to activate. Don't forget that. Next up, Lubellion and Albion. Okay? These dudes, they both got the same text on them. You can only summon a level 8 or lower fusion monster with their effect. No big boys, no big freebies like that. A level 8 or lower fusion monster. I don't know what you'd be going into that's bigger, but if you could think of something, drop it in the comments down below, because I can't think of it right now. Just don't get caught out on that. Somebody pulling some fishiness on you, okay? Like, I know there's some new plant fusions coming out soon. I think like with Dimension Force or something. So when the Predap variant of this deck comes out, who knows? Who knows? Just don't get caught out with that. Next up, Branded Opening and Branded Fusion. They both lock the user. Branded Opening locks the player for the rest of the turn. Branded Fusion locks you for the whole turn, the entire turn. So you can't link summon before using it. You can only fusion summon that whole turn, okay? That's an easy one that you could slip up on. It's right there. You don't think anybody'd ever forget that. People forget that, okay? If your opponent goes like Branded Opening, Summon out Tragedy, they can't link into Relinquished Anima, okay? They have to fuse for the rest of the turn. Next up, a couple Predaplants. Predaplant Dracostapelia. Quick effect, you place your Predaplant counter on a dude. It only negates the activated effects of a monster with a Predaplant counter on it, not the continuous effects. So if they have like Banisher of their Radiance on field, you don't negate that effect. You would only negate an activated effect. That's a continuous passive sort of effect. That would not be stopped by a Dracostapelia. Next up, the Predaplant Trifoveritum, I believe is the name. I'll throw it up on the screen. Yes, he negates the special summon of a monster from the extra deck. Not if it was summoned from card effect, though. So if they go like Tri-Brigade Karas, Banish 2 to summon out Farajit, you can't negate that summon because it was summoned via card effect. If it was in like an inherent sort of summon, like you linked away 2 dudes to summon out the Farajit, that's a different story. So remember, you can't negate a card effect with the Trifoveritum. Next up, Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. This is one 100% some of you dudes are going to get hit by. I don't want you to get hit by this. He only burns when he was summoned directly from the extra deck. Not if he goes to grave and then comes back out, or banished and then comes back out. It's only from extra deck to field, then he can burn you. Because it says in his text, if this fusion summon card, remember, so once he comes from the grave, he's not fusion summoned. He's summoned from the grave. That's a whole nother dude. That's not the same dude that came from the extra deck. Don't forget that. Come on. This is simple stuff, guys. Come on. That looks to be it for what I want to cover with this deck. There's some interesting tech choices people can do. Like I said, like, you know, Book of Moon. There's Dragonroid to, like, you know, stop you from like Ashen the Branded Fusion. The different fusion substitutes that they can make, like a Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon against trap decks is really interesting. Millenniumize Restrict. That's a good one, like, you know, stopping Ash Blossom so they don't lose the Branded Fusion. Making like Mechaba, Dragoon, like I said before. Like, we're looking at different variants of the deck. Like the Shadal variant is pretty strong. That's definitely a contender. There's the Invoked variant, which is interesting. I don't know how I feel about that one. Brave is it's really like the contention right now. Do we play Brave? Do we not play Brave? Looks like everybody's leaning towards play Brave. But who knows? Who knows? It's a tough decision. Even like, you know, once the new like Tri-Brigade Despia is a really good deck too, surprisingly, right? Eldritch Despia, because, like, you know, just put Eldritch with anything and it's going to do fine. Even like once the new Predaplant cards come out, Predaplant Despia is a monster of a deck. That's another one you might want to keep an eye out on. Those Predaplant cards are wild. Like, what, they get like 5 pieces of support and every single one of them is super playable, which is awesome for Predaplant, honestly. Yeah, like other tech things, other choices, like, you know, Fusion Destiny, they can go into like, Fusion Destiny can be like a combo starter in a way. Like, they go into like the Destiny Hero Dangerous. That's a really interesting line. A lot of different ways people can go with this deck. Really cool. I really love this deck. I've been playing it like for like the last 2 weeks straight, just online, just learning all the different interactions, different combos and stuff. So I could, like, you know, do a video like this and tell you like what I've experienced that like really grinds my gears, you know. yeah, with that, like, I hope you guys enjoyed. I wanted to get you guys ready, get you boys ready for this coming format, because this format, I know you guys are sick of it, but like, this deck is changing the metagame, flipping it on its head. We got a new behemoth in town. With that, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and leave a comment down below. Was there any interactions that I missed? Anything that like you think really hurts Despia that you found when you played it or played against it? Let me know down below. Let me know down below. Or any sort of other cheats that I didn't mention. Give me a, like, let's make this comment section real useful for the common person. Timestamps are gonna be down below, hopefully. Yeah, check out my Instagram. If you hit me with a DM. If you have any questions, I always try to answer all my DMs when I can. Yeah, thanks so much. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Deuces.